Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, Christopher Paul Carey and Cathy Mann Wilbanks moderate a panel discussion about the 100th anniversary of Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc. and its role in continuing Burroughs' legacy. Christopher is ERB Inc.'s Director of Publishing, and Cathy is its Vice President of Operations. Joining them are authors Chris Adams, Scott Eckert, and Will Murray, who are contributing to the Burroughs Universe. The panel was part of ERB Fest 2023, which was held in conjunction with PulpFest. This podcast was recorded on August 3rd at PulpFest 2023 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Christopher begins.
Thank you all for coming out here and helping celebrate 100 years of Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated and for ERB Fest. So really want to thank everybody at the PulpFest committee and everything for helping make this come true, this dream. So first I'm going to just introduce our panelists here. So we have Cathy Wilbanks. She is the Vice President of Operations at Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. We have Chris Adams. He's the author of Dark Tides of Mars, a new novel of Barsoom, up for pre-order right now. And we have Scott Eckert. He is the author of Tarzan, Battle for Pellucidar, and the upcoming Korak at the Earth's Core, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then we have Will Murray, who most of you know, who for Edgar Rice Burroughs is the author of a lot of books. Tarzan, Conqueror of Mars, Tarzan, Return to Paladon, King Kong versus Tarzan, and
Tarzan
most lately Tarzan Back to Mars. So,
there we go.
So we're going to begin. First, Cathy's going to talk a little bit about the centennial and a little bit about Edgar Rice Burroughs' life. Then I'm going to kind of talk about new developments with the company going on, and then we're going to talk to each of the authors in turn. So,
Well, it only took us 100 years to get here, but we finally made it. This year has been really special for the corporation. So we've celebrated in several different ways. We started off with an open house at our historic Tarzana office. We did a panel at the WonderCon, and that was really great because it was just a great way to start off the whole celebration. Recently we did a San Diego Comic-Con panel, and that was interesting because the room capacity was about 175 people. Well, I think we had about 172 people in the room. It was crazy. It was so well attended. We only brought 100 coins because we gave out a special commemorative item, and a whole bunch of people obviously left and they didn't have coins, so I've been mailing them out like crazy. Then we're here, as you know, and at the end of September we're participating in a Tarzana International Film Festival. We are the first recipient to receive an ERB Legacy Award, so that's really exciting. We'll be sending out more information about that. If any of you are in the LA area during that time, it would be great if you could come out. The grandson, John Burroughs, will be accepting the award along with a few other family members, so it should be a really great event. Then we have video tributes from celebrities, family, and friends. We'll be posting those online through our social media coming up here soon. And then we've got different commemorative merchandise and, of course, various book releases, which you can see at our table. So we can talk about all that if you stop by. And then definitely sign up for our newsletter at erburrows.com so you can keep track of everything that's going on. These are the coins. These are special, I'm trying to read it here. Yeah, the Centennial coins. They're done by Goliath Coins, and the mold is actually going to be broken at the end of 2023. So they're only available this year. So if you want to get a set, they run $20 each. But if you get the whole set of 8, they're offering a discount for $150. So you've got to go online. I've run out of them. I can't keep them in stock. They're really been popular. They're fantastic. We do have a set available at the table for you to check out, so you got to come by and take a look at them. They're really well done. We've also celebrated this year by launching a new official Tarzan.com website, so that's up there. It's been a soft launch because it's been a process trying to get it all together. So you'll find there's a couple things that we're still building, like for example under the news tab. We don't have a lot under there quite yet, so we're transferring things over. And once it's more complete, we'll announce it through a MailChimp. And of course, we've got the Moon Maid Centennial, and there will be a panel on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Then you'll be able to hear all about that. Did you want to talk about that at all?
No, I mean, you can go
well,
for
it's
it.
going to be a great, beautiful, beautiful book that Jim Gerlach, ERB Books, puts out. That is going to be available fairly soon. It's on pre-order right now. Amazing art that goes with it. And then I just wanted to take just a few minutes just to kind of review who Edgar Rice Burroughs was and how we actually got here as a corporation. Many of you know that ERB was born in 1875 and in Chicago back in as we heard from Lee and from others. He struggled through his life. He didn't start writing until he was 35. He had so many different professions, and some he was good at, some he wasn't. And he finally was just sitting there in a coffee shop waiting for his sales reps to come back to report. And he was reading these pulp magazines. He's like, I could do way better than this. But he didn't use that kind of language. He used just a little bit, excuse my French. But so he started to actually write. And then he sent in the first manuscript, which was Under the Moon of Mars, and he got $400 for it. Now, this is just the real quick version. I know that there's a lot of other details, and you all probably know a lot about the story, but I'm just going to give you a real quick overview. So from there, it was published in the All Story magazine in 1912, and there it is there, Under the Moons of Mars.
Under the pseudonym Norman Bean.
Norman Bean, yep.
But it was supposed to be Normal Bean.
Yep. It was supposed to be Normal Bean because he wanted everybody to know that he was normal inside his mind, you know. But the editor changed it to Norman. So it was like, wow, okay, we're going to go with Norman. So he continued his writing career, and it wasn't until the third story. He did, what was the Outlaw Torn was the second effort. Then the third effort was, of course, as we know it, Tarzan of the Apes. And that one just catapulted his career, and he became this great author. And he got $700 for this one, and that totally changed his life, and that was it from then on. It was published hardback in 1914, as you can see there. Then in 1918, as we know, the movies first featured Tarzan of the Apes with Elmo Lincoln, and it was the very first one to gross over $1 million. It just changed so much about science fiction in the world and movie going. So what do you do when you have a great movie hit? You move to California, close to Hollywood, but not in California, not in Hollywood. So he bought 550 acres from General Gray Otis, who was an editor and a founder of LA Times, and there he settled in. So he had this beautiful ranch. He tried to be a gentleman farmer for quite a while, and in there he is there as a gentleman farmer. And again, you know, he always went back to writing because that was his strengths. His imagination was quite wonderful. So there he is riding his horse. In 1927, he decided to build the office. He started selling off some of the land, parceled it off, and in the late 1920s, Tarzana was born. There's the office there, and we are still there on Ventura Boulevard. We have the greatest little treasure there. We've got sky rises and traffic and the whole bit all zooming around us, and we're this little treasure with this huge, beautiful tree in the front of our office. It's just a really charming, tranquil garden. I know many of you have been there, but if you haven't ever, you've got to come over and see the office sometime. Just let me know ahead of time that you're coming, and we'll do a full tour. So it's really a special experience. So there he is there with Johnny. The movies took off. They had so many develop in the coming years.
Buster Crabbe.
Yeah, Buster Crabbe. And we continue with Glenn Morris. and Joanne
Jim Pierce.
and Jim Pierce. Yeah. Then in his later lives, he moved to Hawaii, where he became a war correspondent, and there he is there.
This is still on Tarzan.
Oh, that's still on Tarzan. Okay, yep.
There we go.
There's Hawaii.
There we go.
That's Hawaii. Yep. Yep. He became the oldest war correspondent, and he actually witnessed Pearl Harbor.
That's actually the shot from Pearl Harbor. They didn't know what was going on at the time. They thought it was like exercises, naval exercises or something, and that they were really witnessing the attack.
Yeah. And there's Hully.
Tell them who
And
Hully is. They might
ERB.
know who Hully is.
They know. Ellie.
Not everybody.
Hully is ERB's son. From what I understand, they were playing tennis in the morning before it hit. So there he is there as a war correspondent. And then this is his family. And as he began to reach his golden age, the kids took over. So we've got Hully there on the left, and then Marion and John Coleman Burroughs was all the way on the right. And they stepped in and took over the corporation. And there's again Hully Burroughs, Marion Burroughs. And I was actually hired when Marion was still in the office. So that was an experience. She was a tough cookie. Danton Burroughs was my immediate boss, and I worked with him in the warehouse, packing books and doing all sorts of inventory, and he taught me so much about the archives. That's how I started with the company. And unfortunately, in 2008, we lost him to a heart attack. Every generation has a Tarzan, and that's proof. And the only one we don't have on there is Alexander Skarsgård, so we've got to add him on there. And there he is. All right, we got to quickly move through it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take over after
All right,
this.
your turn.
All right, so in 1931, Edgar Rice Burroughs started publishing his own works, trying to cut out the middleman and businessman that he was. And up through 1967, they published books. The last one was I'm a Barbarian. They kind of went dormant in the 1950s and 60s until that last one that they put out. But right in 1948, they did a big push right when ERB was in his elder years to get as many of them back in print as possible. But we have relaunched the publishing division. A lot of you know we have the Edgar Rice Burroughs Authorized Library, very handsome definitive editions with new cover art and frontispieces by Joe Jusko, new forwards and afterwards by ERB scholars and luminaries, and huge sections, especially as you go along. We've been putting more and more in the archival sections in the backs of the books. So I encourage you to stop by our table and take a look at those. But we've got a lot of stunning artwork. Joe's doing like the best work of his career on this stuff. That's his words. So we have up through book 20 right now available, and we're hoping to get books 21 through 24 out. Go. These are the ones that just came out. We're hoping to get the last 4 Tarzan in the main series out by the end of the year. And here's a preview of some of the art. He's still working on the last piece of artwork, but it's just amazing artwork. And then next year, after the main Tarzan series has been published, we're going to start publishing the Barsoom novels, the original Barsoom novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So those will also have the big archival sections and all the new artwork by Joe and new forwards and afterwards. And we're calling 2024 the Year of Mars. So if we can if Joe can get me the 7 paintings, I will get those 7 books out. So, and then we're also going to have the first ever novel starring Deja Thoris. I'll mention that in just a bit here. And then Chris Adams here, his second book should be coming out next year. So, cool. If all goes well. And back in 2019, we launched the ERB Universe. We've put out a lot of books in that series since then. These are new works set in ERB's worlds, based on the original canon by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So they're consistent with Burroughs, but they're also consistent with one another. So before that was the Wild Adventures series. That's what Chris and Will are writing in. That gives the authors a little bit more leeway to do what they want to do, if they want to have their own internal consistency within their books, versus they don't have to, like, if Will writes a book, he can contradict what Chris writes. But they're all trying to work off of what ERB did, or innovate on it, So they can be as true to canon, to the original canon, as an ERB Universe book, just to be clear. So it's just that the ERB Universe ones are consistent with one another. That's all. So these are the Universe books we put out last year. End of last year, my book, Victory Harbin, Fires of Halos, came out. That was introducing a new character who descended from the original canon, Victory Harbin, and that is on sale now. And so right now we are putting out Cosmic Epics and Savage Epics. This is an effort really to try to get new readers, younger readers into the ERB ecosystem. So these are the first works, these are omnibuses, collections of the first works in all of ERB's major series. And Garen Roberts, who a lot of you know here from PulpFest, he wrote the introductions to these books, really great introductions, putting them into the context of the whole literary landscape and how they influenced everything going afterwards. Because these books are the books that changed the face of science fiction and fantasy. But we have Cosmic Epics here debuting at PulpFest. We don't have Savage Epics yet, but it's coming in just a few short weeks, hopefully before the end of August. So please check those out. There's also interior illustrations by a lot of great classic ERB artists in them. And I wrote a preface, if you care. So here's that book, Princess of Mars. Oh, it got cut off. It's supposed to say Shadow of the Assassins by Anne Tonser-Zedes. This is a brand new book novel about Dejah Thoris. It's actually set before she met John Carter. So this is a very young Dejah Thoris kind of learning the ropes of things. It's a really good novel. I have the manuscript already. Hope to get that. I'll probably go up for pre-order early next year. So, but she's a fantastic writer. So, and then we've been doing a lot of comics. So for the first time, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, instead of licensing out comics, we've actually been producing them in-house and having complete oversight of them. So there was a little bit of a movement of the company in the 1970s where the company had a lot of oversight over what they call graphic albums back then. But this is us actually publishing them. We're not licensing them out. And they are also canon. They also are canon with the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe books. So it's the same world building, the same continuity. So we first came out with Jane Porter, The Primordial Peril, a one-shot comic book introducing Jane Porter as her own hero. And then most recently we came out with Jane Porter and the City of Fire, which we have both of these in the dealer's room at our table. If you want to check those out. Fantastic artwork, written by Mike Wolfer, and artwork by Mariana Puglia. It's just really, really good. It also, they do tie into the novel. So if you're reading the Swords of Eternity super arc that Wynn and I have written installments in, there are references to that. It all ties together. And speaking of Jane Porter, we have an official Jane Porter Instagram that you should all follow. So that's Cathy's daughter-in-law posing as Jane there. So it's a fun thing if you're on Instagram. We are about to do a Kickstarter for The Moon Maid, The Three Keys. So this is collecting the 3-issue miniseries, but there's going to be a brand new story in the back by Mike Wolfer, a Moon Maid story. And we're introducing a new special feature, which Mike won't let me say what it is, but a new really, really fun special feature that's going to be in the backs of our featured comics. Maybe have a feature comic with them too someday. We'll see. But so that's going to be on Kickstarter. This is the limited edition cover. It's going to be Frazetta cover. We've been working with the Frazetta girls on this one. They provided the artwork for that, so that's great. So that'll go up soon. It'll actually go up in August. So it's coming real soon. Mike's working hard on that. But there's going to be a new Victory Harbin graphic novel coming out that is a sequel to my novel. It's really, really high quality stuff. We have it all in. Here, I'm just going to give you some samples of it real quickly here, just so you can see the beautiful artwork. But they did a fantastic job on it. And this is set in the OMA system from Beyond the Farthest Star. But we're going to planets beyond Pelota, beyond the one that ERB wrote about. So we're able to expand on the world building, because there are 11 planets in that solar system, and ERB only took us to 1, so now we're going to the other ones. So this is on the planet Xandar. And then there's Hucklebuck. If you've read my book and read some of the Beyond the Farthest Star comics that came out recently, he's a favorite. I'm going to spoil this, but in the Kickstarter for the Victory Harbin Ghosts of Omas, we're going to have a Hucklebuck plush, because a lot of people have been asking for it. You brought one.
I have it. It'll be at the table tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And those are actually being handcrafted by Cathy's mom,
Wow.
who has worked for the company since 1976. So.
She's such a perfectionist. You guys got to check it out.
So this
It's
really
great.
is an ERB Inc. production. The
Yeah.
stuff that we're doing is like we are actually literally all of us
family
making
effort.
it.
We're all working together.
So, but it's a fantastic comic. And how are we doing on time? We're doing okay. And so now we are to the segment for the author. So this is the cover art for Wynn's novel coming up, Korak at the Earth's Core. It's by E.M. Gist. It's a wraparound cover. I'm going to show that off too. You can see that. It's a beautiful wraparound cover. So you get that whole Pellucidarian curving upward landscape kind of thing. So, but I'm going to let Wynn take it away from here.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So thank you to ERB Inc. and everyone for the support and allowing me to come back and do another entry in the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe. So my first book was Tarzan, Battle for Pellucidar, and it was part of the Swords of Eternity super arc, 4 books, which can be read as standalones, but then if you read them, now that the fourth book is out, go back and read them all together, right? And you'll have a different way of experiencing it. Because there are common threads throughout. It was a great experience to write that book. It was very, a dream come true, frankly, to be able to write one of the most popular characters of all time, Tarzan. So they graciously invited me back, and we talked about it and thought, look, Korak is kind of an overlooked character. He had his own novel in The Son of Tarzan, and then he has basically some cameos in a couple of the subsequent books, and then he kind of disappears from view. And the Korak comic books that came out from Gold Key and then DC were pretty popular, but they kind of did their own thing with Korak. They dispensed with Miriam, his wife, who he married at the end of Son of Tarzan. That's not a spoiler, because that book is over 100 years old. And so Miriam doesn't, for all intents and purposes, doesn't appear in the comics, and then they kind of de-age Korak back to, maybe 15 or 16 or 14, and he's more of a teenager, and he's having some really sort of trippy adventures in some of those comics. A lot of fun. But we're not going off of those comics in this book. We're going back to the first novel, Son of Tarzan, and really dealing with the initial characterization as Burroughs presented him, which is, some might say it was a rehash, kid raised in the jungle by himself, overcomes adversity, wins the girl. But Korak is, if you really are slowly reading The Son of Tarzan, he's definitely a different character from Tarzan. He's got a rougher edge. He does a few pretty unsavory things in the first half of the book. And then we kind of have the introduction of Miriam about halfway through, or rather, she's been introduced before, but we have the meeting of Korach and Miriam approximately halfway through. And then you sort of have your classic trope of redemption, the redemption of love, and Korach kind of rises to the occasion, and his behavior improves correspondingly. But so what I wanted to look at was, well, how would Korach behave if Miriam weren't around? And by the way, I'm not doing anything like splitting up Korach and Miriam. They're happily married. The decades have gone on because they have the immortality elixir. But they don't have necessarily the exact same type of relationship as Tarzan and Jane do. All that said, Miriam is definitely a primary character in the book. That's her right there. So she rates a cover appearance, and we're kind of doing the traditional alternating chapters of Korach and Miriam, and then having their separate adventures and coming together. But it's been kind of a treat to kind of deal with Korach, and what if we took away that redemptive influence of Miriam? How would he behave without her? And kind of what is going on with Korach psychologically that maybe his father dealt with in a little bit better manner than Korach is dealing with. So don't want you to get the idea this is not grimdark Korach, like with all these dark superhero movies and stuff that's going on. It's not what it is. But there's a little bit of a deeper character look, I would say. So in the tradition of the Edgar Rice Burroughs Universe, kind of the mantra is moving the stories and the characters forward. What has happened in their lives subsequently? Where are they going with their lives? And just as Burroughs was kind of always writing, not always, but quite a bit concurrently in the concurrent time frame in which he was living, we're moving the Korach and Miriam story forward several decades. So the Swords of Eternity super arc was in the early 1950s, or 1950, 51. The Jane Porter comics are in 1952, and then we kind of jump forward to 1971 for this series. So this will be the first book in a trilogy of 3 called the Dead Moon Super Arc, a Pellucidar trilogy. So we're going to kind of see the Greystokes get a little bit more involved in the goings-on in Pellucidar, but we'll still have the return of David Ennis and Abner Perry and Diane the Beautiful and so on. But again, moving it forward because people's lives are not static, and these characters are not static. They grow and they do things. One thing that I wanted to mention, if I still have time, is kind of one of the key components of the character of Korach, or one of the key controversies around the character, was what I'll call a self-inflicted wound by Mr. Burroughs. Sorry. But he wrote The Beasts of Tarzan, and in The Beasts of Tarzan, Korach, or Jack, little Jack, is an infant who is kidnapped or allegedly kidnapped. And then we jump forward to the next book, The Son of Tarzan, and he's a teenager who then goes off to Africa and spends several years there. And then we jump forward again, and suddenly we have a mention in Tarzan the Untamed that I believe it was Terrible. Tarzan the Terrible, that Korach is serving on the Argonne Front in World War I, which that offensive was September to November 1918, the very last months of the Great War. And so there's a continuity glitch there because it says right in Tarzan of the Apes that Tarzan was born in 1888. So how can he have a son who was an infant and then suddenly is old enough to serve in the Great War? And most of you have probably heard of this. It's called the Korach time discrepancy, and there have been a lot of different fan solutions to it. Some folks move the date backward for Tarzan of the Apes. Other folks, Phil Farmer, for instance, has suggested that maybe Korach was actually an adopted son. Canonically, we're not going with either of those, but we will address the great Korok time discrepancy in the book, in the series. We'll introduce the issue in the first book, probably won't provide the full solution to it until the third book. But this will be an in continuity, in universe, addressing what happened there. So I'm having fun with that. And I think I'll wrap it up so I don't take too much other folks' time. But I do want to, mention that this is about the dead moon of Pellucidar. It's the pendant moon, which is in geostationary orbit within the hollow Earth, which is just, crazy. I mean, what an innovative concept, right,
yeah.
for him to come up with.
And it hangs like a mile above the surface.
Yeah,
so how do the physics of that work?
Exactly.
My character, Victory Harbin, wonders about that.
Right.
So we'll see if it gets solved in your novel.
Yeah, it's like this little tiny moon that's hanging above, 1 mile above the inner curved surface of a hollow world. And how does that work? There's a place that's called the Land of Awful Shadow, which is in perpetual shadow because the moon always hangs in the same place in relation to the inner crust. And so where all of the rest of Pellucidar is eternal daylight, sun 24/7, if there were time, which there's not, perpetual daylight, and then you have this weird land of awful shadow, which people are afraid of, and you have this mysterious dead moon that no one has ever been to, and it's all tied up in Korok and Tarzan. Tarzan goes on a rescue mission to look for his daughter, Suzanne, who has disappeared, Miriam, who has been left behind by Korok and is pissed about that, follows in a different way, and we'll see how they all come together to try to rescue Korok's daughter, who's Tarzan's granddaughter.
So this book will be announced very soon, and will be shipped before the end of the year. So coming very, very soon. Awesome. Thank you, Wynn.
Thank you.
So I'd like to move on to the Wild Adventures series now. So let's move on to Will. So if you tell us a little bit about your new book, Tarzan Back to Mars.
Well, here it is. I brought copies with me, the soft cover. Well, when I did my first Tarzan Return to Palo Dawn, the setup was Tarzan joins the RAF in World War II. In this book, it happens he's coming back from his wartime service, and as he's flying along over his portion of Africa, North Africa, he sees these metal birds and these savage warriors flying around, and they have a little engagement in the air, and he recognizes they don't belong to Africa because they're not only white, but they're riding birds that are clearly made of metal, and they're robotic in that sense. So he's got to figure out who these interlopers are. So this book is a sequel to my second complete Tarzan. We're not going to count Tarzan versus King Kong versus Tarzan, because that's more of a King Kong novel. But in that one, for those of you who haven't read it, Tarzan ends up on Mars through no fault of his own, and he hates it. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to get home, but he has to survive in the short term. So he has adventures on Mars, gathers allies, and through his first contacts with John Carter on Mars, they have a series of misunderstandings because Tarzan appears to be raising an army when actually he's just acquiring followers who see him as a leader. So they have a big disagreement, and eventually they work through that in a big epic battle, and Tarzan finds his way back to Earth through the help of people who I won't name but who know how to do it. And so I had a lot of positive response to this book, but a couple of people said I was really hoping for a team-up book where they team up to fight a significant adversary. Well, that was in the back of my mind all along. I always hoped to write a sequel to the book because I thought it was if we could get Tarzan to Mars for the first time and then give him a plausible reason to go back, he might have a different kind of adventure. And in this case, he and John Carter and Tarkus and others are allies. When Tarzan realizes the interlopers in Africa are Martian, number one, and two, they're setting up a colony which he won't tolerate because they brought Thoths and other giant Martian creatures who are lumbering around wrecking everything. He realizes he has to go back to Mars, talk to John Carter if he knows who these people are. He has some clues in terms of names and things. So that he reconnects with John Carter, and they have a kind of a detective story element where they have to figure out, okay, who are these people? We have these clues, this place name, we don't know if it's a place, a person, or whatever. And they start to work the problem, as they say at NASA, by talking to people who would say, okay, there are metal Malagors. Where are Malagors? Naturally on Mars, they're here. Let's go there and see if there's a connection there. What if we talk to this person? What if we talk to that person? I don't want to name names. That's the back cover image for the hardcover by Joe DeVito, which just got finished only a couple of weeks ago. So this is sort of, originally I was going to call this 3 Against Mars. It was sort of like 7 Against Thebes. It was John Carter, Tarzan, and Tarkus, taking on the problem. Finding the base that these spaceships are coming from and destroying it and stopping the invasion of Africa. But as I wrote the book, more opportunities came to introduce other characters, reintroduce other characters, so it became more like 7 Against Mars. And we have some interesting crossovers with other Burroughs series that are not as direct as they might be. They're sort of glancing, but you'll find them very surprising and very satisfying because we have Tarzan and John Carter getting allies on Earth who can help them solve the problem. So without giving too much away, this is sort of a tour of Mars. A lot of your favorite Martian Barsoomian characters will be encountered in this book. And I really like it because it's different from the first one in the sense that the first one is an epic of survival and misunderstandings, and this is essentially a team-up book, Some of Burroughs' greatest characters team up to solve a problem, and they do it in classic style. And I had a lot of fun with it. It basically wrote itself.
Well, when will the hardcover be available?
Sometime in August, depending on my cohort in crime, Matt Mooring, who's going to design it. And I should mention this. I wrote a Sherlock Holmes story in which John Clayton, Lord Greystoke, comes to Sherlock Holmes with a problem, a mystery to be solved that he can't solve with his resources. And we not only got this, approved by the Edgar Rice Burroughs people, but we reached out to the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle estate. They read it and they approved it. So while the soft cover carries, I'm very proud of this because this is a new thing, bearing the stamp of approval of Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc. I liked it so much, I wasn't satisfied to have it in black and white, on a front page. We put it in color on the back, and I thought this is, it's a nice design element. We made it orange to blend in and match the logo, but it just looks cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for the hardcover, which will have that on the back cover, the Sherlock Holmes and Tarzan story in the back will have the imprints of both. So it's never been done before. So, there's never been a crossover between those two characters that was approved by the estates of the creators. So it's a really historic and very cool thing.
Yeah.
And it's a good story. It's not a short story. It's 10,000 words. So it's a novella.
All right. Well, I really encourage people to pick up the book. Will has copies at his table, right?
That's right.
So check that out tomorrow morning while he still has copies.
Yeah, well,
Because I know Will sells through his stock real fast. So definitely check those out. So, but thank you, Will.
thank you.
And so now let's move on to Chris Adams. So he has a new book that we just announced on Tuesday on EdgarRiceBurroughs.com called Dark Tides of Mars, a novel of Barsoom. So you want to talk a little bit about that. And,
Yeah,
I keep behind you.
I'm still getting used to the new title.
Yeah.
I had a working title, Scientists of Mars, because one of my favorite type of characters that Burroughs put in a lot of his Martian novels were the scientists. They created, the compound of invisibility and the rays that made ships disappear and just all those cool things. So I got the idea to have this basically a mashup of a bunch of scientists, and there was a reason for it. The good scientists from the cities of Gathol and Helium and all that, what I would call the allied city-states, they discovered that they're on the cusp of a catastrophe. And to head off this catastrophe, they come up with an idea that there was a couple of cities that they used to do business with back in the day, back in the seafaring days, that had the purest form of radium that was available on the planet. And they need it. They need it to stem off this catastrophe. So they come up with there's a young scientist named Dat Voga, who is an outstanding pupil. He's an excellent swordsman and very keen and sharp in his vocation. They make him an ambassador, and they send him off, and they don't send him alone because he's not studied in speaking to foreign powers. So they form a group, and they elect and decide that Carthrus will accompany him to make sure he is a good statesman. And so these two take off to go find these two lost cities that nobody has been to in literally hundreds of thousands of years, not knowing whether they still exist or not. And at some point, they are engaged because of a run-in they have with a salty character from one of those two cities. They have those guys attack them, and they end up fighting it out in a gorge where they're all captured by this scientist who has been sitting in there hunkered down like a spider, basically maniacally coming up with this wild plan he's going to destroy modern-day Barsoom, and he's got a definite plan to do so. And as you have seen from the cover, this involves our modern-day characters actually time traveling, because that's what this guy intended to do, was to time travel, where he would then sow the seeds for Barsoom's destruction in the past. And these guys are on the cusp of being destroyed by this scientist whose name is Daxus Null when they use his machine to escape him. And the only thing is that when they do so, they understand how to use it to go into the past, but they have to figure out how to later use it to get back to the future. And so you have kind of a juxtaposition of where John Carter first came to Barsoom. He was the only white man on there until they met some of the Holy Therns later on. But basically everybody's the red men and the yellow men, and then you have the black men. But in this story, you have a red man and a red girl who are the only two red people in the world, and the rest are the ancient Orivars. And so they will meet the seafarers and have all kinds of exciting adventures. The whole time, Dat Voga, this savvy, smart, sharp, dapper scientist, mind-boggling, tried to figure out how to use this machine that was invented by this crazed maniac. But can he do it in time to get back? Because at the time that he escaped to save this girl, Carthrus was still captive. And so he knows that this guy's going to kill him. He's going to wipe out everybody that could possibly stop him. And I'm not sure how much time to spend talking about the novel. I know we're running short. But that is the crux of it. And I wish to thank ERB Inc. because I have been talking to these guys for years now. I wrote this story right after I saw the John Carter movie, so 2012. I finished it up, fired off an email to Jim Sulos, and he was interested. And I've been talking with him off and on for years now. And while I was waiting on them, I went on to write 2 sequels to this novel. And eventually, I ended up with 3 full novels. And they were very long. And Jim told me, he said, they're too long to print. They'll be tomes. Nobody will want to read it. And it was Lee Strong who said, just cut them all in half. You'll have 6 novels. So that's what I did. So, I mean, it depends on how well, obviously, this novel does, but there are a handful of them, and they are written as a series. So hopefully these, and I told Chris earlier, I modeled these after the first 3 Barsoom novels, where each one ends in a cliffhanger, right? And what do you want to do? You want to immediately pick up that next one and read it. And I hope that's what you guys feel about these.
Yeah, and so that is available now on our website to pre-order, and it'll be shipping pretty soon. We're pretty far along in the production process, and like I said before, we will be putting out the sequel. So basically, he's got duologies going on now because he split them. So the second of this duology will come out next year. So just wanted to, let's see if we have any more slides. I can't remember. So that's pretty much the end there. Wanted to open it up to questions. Do you guys have anything that you want to ask us about? Any questions about what we're doing at the company? Or?
The various comics that you mentioned earlier, available through normal distribution channels and comic shops?
Right now, no. Now, yeah. So, are you a comic shop owner, or you just want to get them in comic shops? Because we will wholesale them to comic shops. But we're not going through Diamond or anything right now.
So the comic shop could just contact you direct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're launching them on Kickstarter to do the initial funding on them. Then later we'll release a mass market edition with a new cover on it. So, but the Kickstarters have special stuff
Through Amazon or just
through
through our website?
Currently just through our website, but hopefully later on Amazon. But the Kickstarters have a lot of like collectible covers and things, a lot of limited edition things and bonus things. So, any other questions? Questions about our centennial? Questions about?
Are the 100th anniversary T-shirts available that Cathy's wearing?
Yes, we have a couple of them at the table.
All right.
And they're also available on Amazon.
Yeah, check out our store. We have limited stock in our T-shirts right here. So if you don't have the sizes or the particular, we have a ton more patterns too, different designs. Mm-hmm. They are all available at Amazon.com/Tarzan, lowercase t.
Yeah.
Lee.
Question for Will. What part of Africa are the Martians invading?
They are on the shores of Lake Victoria. I think it's west or southwest or northwest. I can't remember from where Tarzan's homestead is.
Okay, thank you. Tarzan is usually considered to live in Kenya, so
Yeah,
Lake
Kenya.
Victoria would be to his southwest.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question about the Martian invasion, because I thought to myself when I was reading the novels, we're lucky that the planet has a different density, right? So that if Martians ever invaded, they wouldn't be able to get up off the ground because John Carter can leap around. So how did you tackle that?
I tackled that by having the Martians wear armor made of the, what is it, I want to say the nth metal, but I may be confusing my series.
Are you referring to the eighth ray?
The eighth ray metal charged by the eighth ray.
They're wearing armor that is treated with the eighth ray.
Yeah.
And their animals are also armored in that way. Although I don't think the banths are. They brought a banth or two to see if they could adapt on their own, but also to keep away African predators, which they saw as pretty formidable, rhinoceros and elephant and such. So they one of the problems they have is if in a fight, if the armor pieces start falling off, they can't move this arm or that or whatever. And so it's I did resolve that, maybe not perfectly, but I resolved it in a sense that was consistent with our modern day understanding, which was also Burroughs. He understood the difference in gravity, and that which is one reason why the invasion plan probably wasn't going to work out too well in the long term. You can't really live in armor, and maybe they would adapt over time, or their children would, or grandchildren would. I'm not sure how that would work evolutionarily, but I did cover that. I thought, well enough to pass muster with readers who would be, concerned about that issue.
I did want to mention one thing I just forgot when I was just going over my publishing overview, is that we are moving forward with a lot more universe novels, and hopefully Will also write another one for us, I hope.
He brought a plot.
Oh, great! We'll have a talk.
I didn't want to say anything about it, but when I wrote this, I thought, well, maybe that's enough Tarzans for me.
Yeah.
But and this is an important thing for me in writing the two crossovers, was to show the difference mentally, physically, psychologically between Tarzan and John Carter, because I once heard a pretty well-known Burroughs fan say, well, John Carter and Tarzan, they're basically the same character. Well, they both have black hair and gray eyes, and they're very capable. But no, they're very different characters. And the beauty and the joy of writing these, and I have to thank Edgar Rice Burroughs, as everybody else has, for letting me do these important crossovers, is to be able to see Tarzan through John Carter's eyes, because he narrates some of these chapters, and to see him through that lens. And for Tarzan to work with John Carter, but also be independent and go his own way when he spontaneously. There's a scene in the book where, and it's not giving it away, where they think they have located the base, but they're not sure this is it. And they're in one of the big battleships of helium. And John Carter is saying, it's night. So it's okay. This may be it. We may have found it. All right. So we'll go back to this city and we'll lay plans to, come back with a larger force. And Tarzan jumps on the rail of the things, and he's going down to investigate now. And John Carter is saying, wait a minute, we're going to lose the element of surprise. And Tarzan says, I am the element. And throughout the book, that's a recurring kind of a thing, And to me, the great joy and fun of writing these books is to do a scene like that, where you could say, yeah, these are two different characters. They think differently, they fight differently, they act differently, and that emblemizes that.
Cool.
So to finish the first part of that, second part, whatever part that was, I thought maybe this is a good time to just say it's a high note. But I announced another project, and a bunch of people on Facebook said, wait, what about your next Tarzan? And I said, well, maybe I should look at that. So I came up with something.
Yeah, the amazing thing about Edgar Rice Burroughs is that he's inspired all these writers to build on his worlds, and there's just something about his world building and his characters that he's created, the iconic characters. So, I'm going to just tease a little bit here, but I'm about to ink the contracts on a new Monster Men novel set in the Monster Men series, or creating it, turning it into a series, I should say, because there was only one novel, and then also a new Land That Time Forgot novel. So stay tuned for those. Yeah. So, but thank you all.
Thank you.
Our time's up. So.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. Also, look for the Pulp Net on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. This Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2023 by William P. Lampkin. All rights reserved.